Hi, it's Kris from mcnews.com.au here at the Sportster S launch today. This is a really big model for Harley Davidson because obviously, as you probably have heard about, because this bike was such big news well before it's actually become available, you're getting an all-new engine that we've seen in the Pan America, you're getting liquid cooling, you're getting a lot more performance. They've just massively overhauled this machine. It's lighter, sportier, more high-tech, really high-tech. Again, you know, there's some commonality between this and the Pan America, but this is a proper Sportster, of course, and very Harley Davidson, which is really cool to see. And probably the last bike that I rode from Harley, which, you know, this reminds me of, is the FXDR, which I loved. However, I think this is a more accessible machine. It's also significantly lighter, significantly sportier, a really cool option out of Harley, and very different than anything I've really ever ridden before from them. So I'm really impressed. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown of my overall thoughts on the bike. And like I said, it's been really cool. It's been a short test today. However, we've had a bit of a hoot. We've managed to dodge some of the rain, and it's really looking impressive from Harley.
So just a reminder here, this was a loop of Sydney's CBD, giving some initial thoughts about the new Sportster S of maybe 30 to 35 kilometres with no freeway, open road or twisties, with a couple of hours on the bike in total, including the photo ops. I won't go into the looks of the bike, you can decide on that yourself. However, as a quick rundown of features, we're getting the 121 horsepower Revolution Max 60 degree variable valve timing V-twin 1250T engine, and that's with 127 Newton meters of torque, Euro 5 compliance, a 6-speed gearbox and slipper clutch, as well as fully adjustable suspension front and rear, including beefy 43mm forks. Travel isn't huge on either end at 92mm front and 51mm rear, with Harley also tweaking the suspension within the standard settings for the test for us, which will have offered a slightly more tailored experience, what you can achieve by adjusting the suspension, than just off the showroom floor. But I'll talk more about that later. Brembo provide the brakes with a single 320mm front rotor and 4-piston caliper and a 260mm rear unit, naturally with ABS. And there's a 17-inch front and 16-inch rear clad in HD GT503 tyres. All up, weight is 222 kilos at the curb with 11.8 litres of fuel, and that seat height is a low 753mm or 734mm with a rider on board. Price is also $26,495 right away here in Australia with 8,000 kilometre servicing intervals. On board the bike, everything falls to hand and foot, even if I'm not used to the forward controls, and as a 180cm rider with 32-inch inseam, it's a natural reach to the bars and pegs, easy viewing angles of the TFT dash and comfortable seat. It was probably the fastest and most naturally I've acclimatised to forward controls on any bike as well. The starter has the Sportster S roar into life before settling into a decent idle tone, which for a Euro 5 bike I'd say is on the good end of things, and knocking it into first offers a solid thunk. Setting off, the weight is low and well balanced, with the geometry and wheel profiles having me a little more actively focusing on cornering, but smooth, predictable and easy all the same, keeping in mind I'm not regularly riding cruisers. The suspension was also sporty and premium feeling for the inner city conditions and nicer sections we frequented, which for a first ride impressed, as harsh bumps on a cruiser can be quite punishing. There was a couple of times that did carry through to a minimal extent, but for the more relaxed pace and conditions I was impressed, although I do weigh 70 kilos, which may help or hinder the setup depending on who they envisaged riding the bike. There was some hunting in road mode too, which may have just been the bike warming up, but I set it to sport and didn't notice it again, with that my preferred mode unless it was very slippery, with the wet mode offering greater rider aid intrusion and a subdued throttle response. There wasn't really a chance to properly open the bike up, but dropping back and accelerating did reveal a willing free revving engine that feels remarkably high tech and high performance compared to most other cruisers I've tested, perhaps with the exception of the Diavel. Even compared to the FXDR, the new Sportster S has a refined feel, and some of that traditional V-twin edge may be gone, but from a performance perspective it seems a massive step forward, especially weighing essentially 25% less than the FXDR. As far as riding in sport, there was great throttle response and torque alongside that easy revving nature, which had me thinking a little of the high-tech Ducati twins, but without the lumpiness down low. that honestly I'm not a huge fan of. It's very smooth and obviously the variable timing helps here, although I couldn't really test out the top end properly to see the opposite end of that VVT spectrum. Braking was also well up to my expectations on the front for a single disc setup, although the rear was the weaker of the two. Normally on cruisers I'm used to the opposite, with a strong rear normally outshining the front. While the short test loop and lower speeds did mean a fairly mundane test for the Sportster S in this arena. Despite the 4-pot Brembo front, it obviously wasn't superbike or hyper naked bite and stopping power, but again this is a cruiser. I definitely fell back on using the gearbox for deceleration though. Here, as with the slipper clutch, there was nice smooth engine braking, ideal for washing off speed with less brake use necessary as a result. It'll be interesting to see whether in a longer test I find it the kind of bike I need to brake heavily into corners on before powering out, or if it favours a more flowing approach. For the city, it certainly seemed the latter. The traction control and ride modes were definitely welcome too, when the back stepped out in a slippery bus lane in sport mode, and after putting it back to wet mode for the more subdued power delivery and earlier intervention, there was no further occurrences, although it may just have been a particularly slippery bit of road in the first place. I wouldn't say I think electronics are a must on some machines, but they certainly suit the new Sportster S and add to the overall package in my mind. Hopefully as something that's rarely if ever noticed. Certainly even in slippery conditions, the ABS never came into play. As far as criticisms, even on the cool day there was a little heat coming up at a stop from the shrouded exhaust system that I could feel through my jeans just on my inner thigh, while the rear wheel throws a lot of water and muck up your back, even reaching my helmet, with nothing to prevent that on the bike. The bar end mirrors also look great, but being round offer a limited field of view and add width to the bike. Big head checks were definitely required as a result in that suburban traffic. Overall though, as first impressions go, this was a good one, with the Sportster S really dragging Harley Davidson into a much more modern style of machine that delivers a lot, but also comes in at a significant premium over the Iron 1200 for instance.
And don't forget to head to mcnews.com.au for the full written test, and of course subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and have a great day.